Hi again. I thought I would post another video today about a recent acquisition to my collection. This is a Hamilton Khaki Pilot Pioneer Mechanical. It's quite a mouthful for a relatively compact watch, but I found it to be quite interesting. However, I've ultimately decided to sell it, and I'll talk a little bit about why I'm choosing to do so. But first off, a little bit about this watch. This is a recent model from Hamilton, and it's based off of the W10 military field watches that were produced for the Ministry of Defense in the United Kingdom in the early to mid 1970s. And this watch in particular is actually pretty close to the original watch. The dimensions itself are very close to the original watch. It's approximately 36 millimeters across, including the crown, 34 millimeters without, and then it's 42 millimeters lug to lug. So it's a relatively small watch by today's standards. I do think that the barrel-shaped case actually makes it look a little bit bigger on the wrist, and I'll go ahead and put it on for you. So here's a view of the watch on my wrist. I have a 7.5-inch wrist for reference. I think some would probably classify this as being too small. Personally, I feel like 36 millimeter watches are very comfortable for me, and I think one of the appealing factors for me is that the fact that Hamilton could have upsized this watch like they do on their more standard khaki models, but they instead chose to go with a 36 millimeter, and I really do respect them for that choice. So yeah, it looks really good on the wrist. You can see here I've got it on a aftermarket canvas strap. It initially came with a leather NATO, which I wasn't a huge fan of, so I decided to put it on this one instead. So I don't have a view of the movement, but this is using the Hamilton 2801 manual 1 movement, and that was another big factor for me. Of course, field watch, in my opinion, should always have a manual 1 movement in it, and so knowing that this had the same 2801 that Hamilton has used for many years on many of their khaki field watches, that was a big drawing factor. The case finishing I find to be very interesting. It's got a vertical brushed finish on the top. On the sides, the brushing continues, but it goes in a slightly different pattern. It still goes up and down. And on the back, it has a polished finish except for the case back, which also retains that vertical finish. Overall, I think it's a really nice job that Hamilton did on this. I've never owned a W10, so I can't compare this to an original watch, but I think the brush finishes do look very nice, and then it's also got the old H symbol on the crown for the old Hamilton logo. So overall, very nice attention to detail here on the case. I did want to highlight Hamilton has decided to put a two-piece case with this design. So the case back is removable. The original watches, the W10s, were actually a monocoque design to where to remove the actual movement, you had to take off the crystal and load or unload it from the front. This one is a little bit different, so you can open it from the back. The case back shape is also a little bit different as well. It's got sort of more of a rounded rectangle, whereas the originals just had a circular design. And I think one other really neat feature about this is that it is a water resistant to 100 meters or 10 bar. I think these were probably only rated originally for 50 meters, so I can imagine that it being up to 100 meters, you can easily swim in this thing with no issues or concerns. Flipping it back to the front, this watch does have a mineral crystal on it. I think it's a sapphire crystal, whereas the originals would have been a plexi. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about why I am planning to sell this watch. I think for me, I'm always looking for something a little bit off the beaten path, and I've always looked at the W10s and thought that it was a really great design. I think, when I first saw these Hamilton reedition watches come out, that, I was very intrigued and like the idea of a of a vintage inspired field watch. But you know, the more that I look at it, I feel like the aging and effects that Hamilton have added to this watch in terms of both that sort of crinkle dial and the aged lume, which I feel like is a little bit heavy-handed. Ultimately, I just didn't wear the watch as much as I thought I would, so I will be selling this one. I did get another Hamilton field watch, actually one that I found in a box of watches many years ago, and I sent that off for service, and I got that back. And so that kind of fills the void for me for now. So it is a really nice piece, just not for me. CWC actually makes almost the exact same watch, except with a more traditional black dial and sort of an off-white colored lume. And if I was going to do it again, I would probably go with the CWC version. But the Hamilton is very nice. I just ultimately think it's just not for me. Anyway, that's all I have for today. I appreciate you stopping by and taking a look. If you have any questions or comments, please post them below. Do you have this watch? Do you have a CWC version? Or do you have an original W10? If so, I'd like to hear from you. Thanks.